Japan's move last year to nationalize a tiny island chain in the East China Sea sparked violent protests across China. Called the Diaoyu in China and Senkaku in Japan, the islands sit in waters rich in fish and possibly oil reserves. China says it's owned the territory for more than 400 years. Government-controlled newspapers fuel nationalist rhetoric, with headlines threatening war with Japan over the islands. Activists like Beijing businessman Tong Zheng say when the islands issue comes up, Chinese people, young and old, are reminded of the country's history and want to fight back. The crisis is now focused on the disputed islands, but it's linked to deeply rooted feelings of victimization by outside forces in China. From an early age, schoolbooks and government propaganda ingrained the sentiment in Chinese minds, teaching them to resent the 19th century invasions by European colonial powers and then by the Japanese in the 1930s. The war sparked by Japan's 1931 invasion left as many as 20 million Chinese civilians dead. When Japanese troops stormed into a city in eastern China 6 years later, tens of thousands of Chinese civilians were murdered, raped, and tortured. The so-called Rape of Nanjing is seared into the Chinese psyche. Mao Zedong led the communist resistance against Japan, and since then the Communist Party's legitimacy as China's sole power has been based in part on keeping China strong in the face of perceived foreign aggression. But for many Chinese, the country's show of strength over the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands has as much to do with the U.S. as it does Japan. We met retired Chinese soldier Guo Fei at a Beijing museum dedicated to the Japanese invasion. He says the U.S. is threatened by China's rapid rise on the world stage and uses strong ties with other Asian countries to try and contain China's peaceful development. The U.S. has announced a major shift of naval resources to Asia, and China is increasingly showing off its own growing military might. Each time Chinese ships sail through the disputed waters around the islands, or Chinese and Japanese jets tail each other through the island's airspace, a minor misstep could quickly snowball into war between the two countries. Some in China do hope that cooler heads will prevail. Guo Fei told us the world can only develop in times of peace. If there is a war, he worries China's economy will go backwards for many years. If war did break out, the U.S. would be obliged to take Japan's side. Preventing that war without compromising the Communist Party's tough stance on national defense will be one of China's biggest challenges this year. Shannon Van Sant, CBS News, Beijing.